So Jack Fisk, you are no stranger to recreating period in a lot of the films that you've done. So when you came aboard the Revenant, talk about how you recreated the harsh realities of frontier's life.
You know, I had researched the period for Lewis and Clark earlier on a project that I was involved with that was never made, and got very excited about the boats and the travel of the river and dealing with the Indian cultures at that time. So when Alejandro at first asked me to work on this, I was really excited because I was able to put to use all that knowledge that that I'd gleaned from reading journals and looking at paintings of Bodmer and George Catlin, and I think that was the thing that got me. And also the fact that Alejandro wanted to shoot in continuity. He wanted to shoot in the real environment, and he wanted the environment to be difficult. Continually in my life, when I visit period structures of museum forts and stuff, I've always thought they weren't quite real, and I wanted to correct the history books. So Alejandro told me about a book that he liked, and that was the Howard Zinn book, People's History of the United States. I read that, and he gave me a film that he liked, Andrei Rublev, by a Russian director, and I saw that, imagery that he responded to, and was excited to get started. The biggest challenge was finding locations to tell the story in, and I worked with Robin Mounsey, location scout, and we went all over British Columbia and Alberta, finding locations. We started in April, and we looked until shooting finished August of 2015. So April of 2014 to August of 2015, we were basically finding locations, building sets, making the film.
Let's talk about some of those sets, because you have both the Native American camps, the fur trapper camps. You've got the giant fort that you've got to design for later on in the film. So talk about some of the research that you did and some of the challenges and difficulties of creating these sets.
Once the locations were found to build the sets in, we decided on that. I did a lot of research, anthropologists and people who had studied the Indian cultures. I read some great stories written by Indians of their houses that were written about turn of the century, about 1900s, but the houses hadn't changed much. I read a lot of journals by trappers that you can get online, that describing forts of the day. I did research of a lot of websites about forts, people that were studying them. And then I looked at the environment to see what was available to build with and what knowledge they might have had about building at that time, and then went forward from that, and basically then used a lot of common sense and available materials. Everything we built with was from that land of the area that we built it. We ended up building one Pawnee village that's shown as a destroyed village in Los Angeles, outside Los Angeles. And that was built with wood and mud right from the location. And the fort was built with wood. We'd gotten some of it from the Park Service, that they had cleared pine trees and for roads and stuff in the parks, and they just gave us the wood for free. So it really helped with our budget.
For sure.
So a lot of it's sort of seeing what's in the environment and using common sense to see how you'd put it together, plus with the needs of the script, how many structures they needed and how big to make them. I think our fort is kind of a combination of medium-sized forts of that era. There's we had to add a few windows for Chivo because he needed some light, and that's about it. It was challenging, and I loved building them because I wanted to see them. I wanted to see what they looked like. I wanted to be able to walk inside an Indian dome lodge. I wanted to, walk down the fort, and figure out how they got their water and where they cooked it and what they ate and where they defecated and what they, how they kept people out. And there were interesting stories. We read one account where they used to hang meat on hooks over the side of the fort to catch wolves.
Oh, no kidding.
Like they were fishing for wolves. They'd come to get that meat and they'd hook them and or shoot them. So it was a crazy time. People were rough then. I mean, we take baths every day and stuff, but the time of the trappers, they probably took 1 or 2 a year, if that. The Indians and other, on the other hand, bathed almost every day. They were very clean. They had a better diet. They were eating corn and beans, and they would dry foods, and they were able to supply the trappers with much of their other foods besides meat. I'd read in the Lewis and Clark journals that the average trapper or soldier that was with them would eat about 10 pounds of meat a day. It's hard to imagine eating that much red meat.
I know, yeah.
But some lived to be in their 90s back then, even.
Wow, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
I think a lot of those little details are the things that lend the film a sense of authenticity, which I think is crucial in period films, because often there's a feeling of separation between the viewer and the period. It's like that was then and this is now. But this film feels very immediate, and because of those details, I think.
We had to make everything pretty real because the film was shot with wide lenses that were often only inches from the actors' faces, or the bear's face, and you saw everything up close. I mean, Jackie West's wardrobe, all the stitching and the leather was very real. The props, the guns, the possible bags, everything they had to be real because it was scrutinized so closely with the lenses. I don't know how the actors could work. Sometimes you would see the camera and it'd be just a few inches from their face. I mean, they got everything backlit so otherwise the shadow of the camera would have shown up on their face. But it worked. You couldn't shoot it in a normal film where you front light people because you'd be so aware of the shadow on their face.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I was so excited when I saw the film and the bear attack, and that bear had his head down and was licking Glass's face, and then he started exhaling that condensation on the lens. And you go, oh my God, I'm too close, back up.
Yeah, no, it definitely, it puts you right there and makes you feel like you're a part of the action, sometimes much to your own peril, I think.
Well, that was the power of what Alejandro and Chivo did in setting up the shots, is in the first battle, they put you right in it. There was stuff happening behind you and in front of you, and without a lot of cuts, you would turn around and you'd see somebody coming at you from behind and then somebody at the side. It was, I think it was very exciting filmmaking for action filmmaking.
No, certainly. Yeah. The other thing that really struck me, and I've talked to other people about this as well, is that you really feel the coldness and the dampness and the rain and the mud and all this. Can you talk about expressing that, through your designs?
Well, first of all, I'll tell you that it was cold and wet. I found out we were shooting up in Squamish that no matter how much you pay for your rain gear, you're going to get wet. So there were people with $600 rain suits and $50 rain suits. They were all wet. We were all wet. So, a lot of that feeling of the cold was real. I mean, we were really cold, and because we were shooting with natural light, it wasn't augmented by, the brilliance of electric lighting. And I think that the actors were really getting muddy, and they were They were, you know, real breath was coming out of their mouths when they talked, and the starkness of the environment looked cold. It felt cold. There was nothing comforting. You know, there was not soft grass. There was not shades on the windows. There was not, you know, there was nothing that looked comfortable, even in their wardrobe. You know, as much as they wore animal furs. I mean, I was thinking last night about Glass when he was going down the river, and he's got this bear pelt, you know, on his over his shoulders. When that thing got wet, it weighed about 300 pounds.
Oh my
And
God.
you know, you're trying to keep your head above water, and you've got this thing like dragging you down, but you don't want to lose it because there's some warmth in it when you can dry it out.
Mm-hmm.
When he got into the climbed in the cavity of the horse, he took off his clothing because he didn't want it to get all wet with the moisture and the blood and stuff in there. That you might be able to keep warm inside of a horse for 5 or 6 hours, but if you got out and you were wet, you would freeze almost instantly, because warm things freeze up faster than cold things for some reason that I've never quite understood, but I know it's true. And I think the fact that, you know, I noticed last night how often Glass's hands were bare, you know, and we all know how cold it is to be touching snow and not have gloves on.
Oh yeah.
The wardrobe was stellar, and when they put hoods on the actors, you know, it looked like they were really fighting to find some sort of saving grace in the, you know, in the extreme weathers. We did things like we painted trees dark, you know, throughout the film to create a separation between the actors and the environment, to make them look a little starker. We simplified stuff every once in a while to make it look more stark, but at the same time, not to take away the beauty of it, that, you know, from the rocks and stuff. But the edges were hard, the ground was cold, and the light was always distant, you know, it was always behind you, and, you know, sort of like leading you on.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think those little details are things that people might sort of miss about what you did on the film. You know, taking the natural environment and changing it just a bit so that it works more like metaphorically, I guess, with the film. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, you know, Chivo said this about cinematography, but I feel about production design is you don't really want people to see what you do.
Right.
You know, you want it to have an effect on people, but if they see it, then you've kind of failed in a way. So I know that every day I was exhausted, and at the end of the film, I was completely wiped out. So I was working. I couldn't tell you how much I did or what I did, but you know, the art department was involved in every scene, one level or another, making it work. And sometimes it was as simple as having a way that actors could move through the setting. You know, sometimes it was, you know, often it was moving snow in. Often it was, we moved trees, sometimes trees 50 feet tall. We moved into a lot of locations so that we could make a location right that maybe was a little bit closer, or that, you know, had the right lighting. That the only thing missing was it needed a forest. And we had a great greensman, Tom Yermenko, who in crew, and they would move small forests and put it in location. So, you know, if people noticed that, it would be terrible. We built a lot of rocks and caves and stuff like that, you know, that art departments do all the time, but we were building them out in the environment where it was sometimes 20 degrees, or, you know, 10 degrees below zero. And we're trying to work with mud and stuff, and it's frozen. So we'd have to heat up a tent just to keep the mud soft so we could put on the Indian villages. It was challenging, but it was fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, you've had such an amazing list of credits. I mean, you've worked with everyone from Terrence Malick to David Lynch to Paul Thomas Anderson, and now with Inarritu. So as you go from film to film, I wonder, you know, is it still possible to learn something new after all these years and all these films?
Yes. Yeah. And this one, and some of it was that how effective not cutting is, how effective being close to the action is, or being inside the action. Some of it is the that I knew was the reality of the settings, how that will keep you thinking in terms of the real environment. I mean, to be shooting a scene when you're cold and you're really cold, it makes it better. I mean, it might in some ways be easier, but it's difficult to work, and it's not so difficult for me because I can wear down or long underwear and stuff, but it's difficult for the actors that have to perform, you know, in that situation. And so you try to make it as easy as possible, but you want them to suffer. As Alejandro said, he wanted them to suffer so they could understand that life. I've been fortunate that, you know, I've gotten to work with some great artists, and I think Alejandro is a great artist. And it was something that excited me about him when I first met him, and having seen his work and felt his passion talking about the story. I knew it was going to be difficult, but it was going to be interesting. And the fact that he wanted to shoot in continuity, I remember telling people that working around me that we should really enjoy this because it's not going to ever happen again. You know, you seldom do you ever work on a film of this scale being shot in continuity on location. So, yeah, I think I appreciated every moment. I mean, I try to stay in the moment.
Right. Well, thank you so much, and congratulations on the film. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Good talking to you, and see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.